The challenger, racing for her freedom, Mouse. And now, our undefeated champion, Nitro! Last man standing wins. 3, 2, 1. Strike! Nitro's right on her tail! Ladies and gentlemen, they're in the tunnel! I think she's showing off. Wow, what a move! I don't think she can take much more. Headed straight for each other. Nitro's here for the first time ever! Oh, that's it! Coming in hot! Game over, Mouse! Not looking good for Mouse! Oh, Nitro, no! Oh, well. Who's next?
Hello, artists and animators, and welcome to the Animation Trends event. Are you considering developing an independent animated production? We brought together a panel of artists to discuss their independent animated productions. Topics include challenges and opportunities associated with producing animation outside of funding from a network and streamers, experiences getting productions off the ground, and advice for artists interested in following a similar route. So, Fable, Nico, and Z, welcome to the stream.
Hello.
Hello.
Good to be here.
And I think we should start with a round of introductions. So, Fable, could you introduce yourself and the independent project that you developed?
Yes, my name is Fable Siegel. I am a longtime animation person in the animation industry of Animation Central, of the Animation California, Los Angeles, California. Sorry, I haven't had much sleep lately because I am working on the Lackadaisy animated film short that is going to be premiering by the end of the month in March. So it's been I got a lot to do. It's based off of the webcomic of the same name, and yeah, it's very exciting. Oh, and there's a plane.
And Nico, could you introduce yourself and the independent project that you developed?
Sure. My name's Nico Colaleo. I'm the creator of Ollie and Scoops. There's my cat in the background meowing. Perfect timing. My show, Ollie and Scoops, is about a 9-year-old girl named Ollie. She's the only human in the entire world who can communicate and understand cats. Her best friend is the family pet cat, Scoops. And because of her unique ability, she learns that cats have a whole underground society that humans don't know about, and they go on adventures and hijinks from there.
And Z, please introduce yourself and the independent project that you developed.
Yeah, so I'm Z. I go by ZEZ on YouTube and pretty much also social media. And I'm the creator of Ramshackle, which is about a trio of street kids who try to survive in the streets of their crime-ridden town. It's very like Flapjack-esque, absurd comedy, but it's also like very slice of life-y, and it has, like a lot of heart. Check it out. But yeah, I used to work on a lot of other indie animations, as well as I used to work in like studios as well. I used to work at Netflix as a storyboard artist. But yeah, now I'm going indie.
So let's talk about what indie means. Z, how would you define independent animation?
Well, I guess the textbook definition is like independent animation is animation that's not really like helmed by a major studio or network. It's independently created. So I would kind of like compare it to like a local restaurant versus McDonald's, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
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 So, yeah, I guess independent animation also has like I guess like the creator has more say in the production as well. Yeah, so it's like very, very creative driven animation.
Fable, is there anything that you'd add to the definition of independent animation?
Yeah, the way I view indie is it's not terribly well defined because it's pretty much anything outside of what counts as industry animation. So stuff that is either put forth by like major studios or like commercial houses for like a literal commercial. And indie can be anything from like one person doing like a little like Lego stop motion project of their own to things like what I'm doing where I'm manning like 100 plus person crew in order to get a short film done. But I'd say that it's largely outside of the major players that people are familiar with. So like, you're not working for like Disney or Fox or Cartoon Network. And that it has usually smaller teams, much less funding. There go my birds, sorry about that. And in a cultural sense, it's perceived as more focused on like niche audiences because it's not trying to appeal to everybody. It's just kind of going like, hey, what do I think would be cool? And it's very it's a project that tends to be more internally motivated, not just profit motivated, if at all.
No, that's a great answer. Nico, is there any thing that you'd like to add in terms of the definition of independent animation?
Sure. And all the cartoon studios, like Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, Disney, Netflix, there are a lot of ideas that get pitched and don't get made. And independent animation is a chance to actually see some of them. Yeah, that's when the artist kind of like the two mentioned before, branch out from studios and kind of make your own thing and put out in the world and get a chance for people to get a chance for eyeballs to see it.
Yes. So with that in mind, Nico, what was your experience like getting Ollie and Scoops off the ground, and what kind of work did it require from you?
Well, the Ollie and Scoops particularly was created to be pitched. Nickelodeon, God, this was 2014. Nickelodeon was having a shorts program. They were opening up the doors for various pitches from people, and I just was like, I'm just going to come up with characters that are specifically to be pitched. Brand new. I don't need to care about them that much because if I sell them, I'm not going to own them. And Nick will own them. And so I came up with Ollie and Scoops. Really, I just thought of like, what's my two favorite things about cartoons: cute girls and funny cartoon animals. So I came up with them. Of course, over time, I pitched, didn't really get anywhere at Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network, and of course learned to started really caring about the characters as I came up with more stories and ideas. And I did a bunch of other projects for a few years, put Ollie and Scoops on the back burner. And then once I was done with a whole bunch of projects and was looking for my next thing to do, I remembered them and I said, hey, I have, I've been working a lot, saving up. I have the money now, and I created a DreamWorks TV show on their YouTube channel called Too Loud. I had a crew already from that, so I thought, why not just grab the crew from that, the same people I've been working with for the last couple of years, and bring them onto this thing, and I think I can, push it and make it at this point because financially, and that's what I did.
Yeah. And Z, first, congratulations on the Kickstarter campaign. What was your experience
Yeah.
like getting your project to that point, and what kind of work did it require?
So the Kickstarter itself was a time, but I'll get into that later. But like, first of all, Ramshackle was a webcomic before I launched the Kickstarter and like thought about doing anything like of this caliber. So I did already have like a little bit of a small fan base, and I also had Ramshackle as my thesis film. Like it was a very short, sort of like proof of concept, minute long short that I made in the my last year of college. So yeah, with that, like I already had a bit of a following, and so that made the Kickstarter a little bit more manageable because I actually already had a bit of an audience who would be interested in the project. But running the Kickstarter itself was kind of hellish because I was doing it all on my own and without any prior experience as well. So I had to gather a lot of like information from people who have done Kickstarters before and do a lot of my own research. And even then, it wasn't like enough. You just kind of had to like dive into the Kickstarter to like know what you're getting into. Like I didn't know that I like campaigning was such a huge part of it. So I was like really scrambling to like make posts as frequently as I could. I would go to concerts and stuff and then like chat people up and be like, hey, support my Kickstarter. And people actually did. So, which was really, really cool. And Jake, if you're watching this, you're awesome. Thanks for donating. But yeah, it was pretty hellish. And I was kind of concerned because it was going quite slow at first and we weren't sure if we were going to make it, but we finally made it on the last day, like barely scraping by. But yeah, we're here now and we're 2 months into production.
That's amazing. And I just wanted to ask, so you mentioned that like the Kickstarter was hellish. What parts of it were like uncomfortable or challenging? Because I could imagine that for a lot of people who go into creating an independent animated project, the things that you're not thinking about necessarily are, oh, I really want to get into marketing and bookkeeping.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I feel like I was just kind of underprepared for how much like how businessy it would be. Like I knew it was gonna contain like marketing and stuff, but I just didn't know like how much exactly. And I think if I were to go back and do it again, I would definitely prepare more like material, like promotional videos, because I think stuff on my YouTube did the best to bring people in. What else? I think it is also kind of just stressful, like especially if your Kickstarter is going kind of slow because you're like constantly checking every single day, and then if you only get like a couple bucks in a day, like you get really demotivated, I guess. But yeah, that was like the stress factor. Yeah, honestly, it was just like I feel like I needed experience. But now I have experience, so if I do this again, I'll know.
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that. Fable, what was your experience like getting your project off the ground, and what kind of work did it require?
Well, I mean, first, like just getting it made in the first place was kind of a challenge. Like originally, it was conceived of as a pitch that we were bringing around to different studios. But the thing is that Lackadaisy is the premise is it's 1927 and there's a dying speakeasy, and the folks who are trying to prop it up are doing a really poor job of it. And so it's kind of this dark satire with poignant moments attached to it. So it's a little comedy, it's a little tragedy, often a mix of the two. And all the characters are cats also, ironically enough. So it was like, we got a cat theme going on here. And it's gotten a very dedicated fan base over the years because it's been a long-running webcomic that's gone on for like a decade plus now. But trying to sell that idea to studios was pretty difficult because it's kind of out there for what they conceive of. They're like, it's not, in their minds, they're like, oh, this sounds like a premise for a kid's cartoon, but it's not for kids. Like there's drinking, there's smoking, people shoot each other. They ride around in cars without seatbelts on. So it's extremely not for kids. And
that would definitely get some S&P notes.
Oh yeah. I'm sure. Like if we got this made by a studio, like, why aren't they wearing seatbelts? It's like cars didn't have seatbelts back then. Also, there are guns. But besides that, adult animation in our field is often defined by, even though there's like some really good examples of fantastic adult animation like BoJack Horseman and Love, Death and Robots and etc. The thing is that most of the time when studios are looking for adult animation projects, they're usually looking for sitcoms that are in the vein of like Family Guy style stuff that looks a certain way and acts a certain way. And it's the kind of thing you can basically mine season after season for. And it's easier to sell that to networks than other things. So they are very reluctant to take on different kinds of projects because the kinds of buyers for weirder projects, they're very few and far between. And you pretty much have to be lucky who you're going to nab to get that done at all. So I showed what we had to people and they were really interested and they were impressed, but they were like, yeah, we don't know how to sell this though, basically. So I remember at the time I was working at Titmouse and I was talking, I was like showing what I had to some of the folks there. And again, like there was interest, but they were like, I don't know, we already got like this other stuff going on. We'd have to put like a showrunner on this or whatever. And I was like, well, I mean, I could do it, but they, I'm not like a name person that would drag people in. I'm not like known outside of like my field basically. So, I was kind of like, okay, well, what could we do? I'm pretty sure we could get funding if we just went to Kickstarter. And I remember Pendleton Ward, who was running Midnight Gospel. I was talking to him about it. And he was like, well, if you want to make a cartoon, just make a cartoon. Don't ask for anybody's permission. Like, if you can get funding, then just do it. And between that and like encouragement from my friends, I was like, okay. And I knew who to turn to for that kind of thing. I'd known Spike Trotman. Her reputation is basically like queen of Kickstarter, the person who owns and operates Iron Circus Comics. She had made a career out of fundraising, essentially, for comic projects. And she knew, she was familiar with the webcomic sphere. That's her bread and butter. That's where she finds lots of talent. So I reached out to her and yeah, she was interested in it. So rather than going through the usual studio route, instead I went, okay, but who do I know knows the potential of this project? Who would really want to invest in this? Who knows how well it could, pay out in terms of like the ripple effects that this can have. And I pitched to that person instead. And so that's how we got the amount of support and help that we did. That's how we were able to run a Kickstarter campaign, even though I don't have personal experience running it outside of like one failed thing. I knew that getting somebody who was more experienced than me was going to be vital to see this through, to get it to the level that it needed to be and be something other than just like, I don't know, 2 to 3 minutes of that was kind of cool, instead of like a complete, like fleshed out thing. So the partnership that we have with Iron Circus has been like extremely beneficial. So that's part of my advice is like, if you don't think you can do it, see if you can, like, who do you know who might be able to, because they might have the marketing talent and knowledge and resources that you don't have. And don't be shy to like look beyond the usual suspects for that kind of support. There's a lot of people out there who would love to support animation in a really direct way, but a lot of folks think of supporting animation as being like drawing it themselves. And it's like, no, there's lots of roles in making cartoons that go beyond just making the cartoon. And artists are desperate for help from people who are like better at this stuff than we are. So, I mean, yeah, for anybody listening who you want to get involved and you're like more in marketing than you are in actually drawing, but you're really passionate about cartoons, there is a place for you. Absolutely. We'd love to help. So, yeah.
Yeah, Fable, how did you go from someone who was pitching this project, trying to develop this project, to managing a team?
Sheesh, that's a good question. I guess I'm kind of a pipeline nerd, and I one of the reasons why I even got into animation was I was just fascinated by the production process itself. Not just, hey, I love cartoons, but but picking up like a making of books and watching and listening to audio commentaries growing up, I really just hungered for any kind of information on how movies and shows were made. A big reason why I even wanted to go into the industry itself, beyond just, gotta make a buck, was I really wanted to see how things were made from the inside. And I was hoping to make stuff myself and just like take the knowledge that I had and build something for myself from all that. So it would go beyond just like, hey, I got to make a buck, to, hey, I can actually make something on my own. I can learn here, apply it elsewhere, and maybe share that information with other people also, because so much of the information on how to make a cartoon is pretty obtuse, especially when it comes to pipeline. So, but yeah, like that industry experience has proven really, really valuable, both to give me an idea of the good and the bad when it comes to project management, and also just being really open to listening to people on the team and being like, hey, I'm not the smartest person in the room. Everybody has their skills, and I want to hear who the smartest person for each aspect is, and see what their feedback is. And that has made everything that much stronger by treating your project, instead of you at like on top of the throne, you're the king of the project. It's like, no, you're the network hub that helps connect everybody to everybody else, and you're constantly just trying to make things smooth and help everybody get their part of the project done smoother and better, and seeing where you can improve. And I think just that, and just like a lot of patience, like really benefited me on this production. Sorry if I rambled a lot. So it's like, I'm like, where am I at? Sorry.
No, that was a great answer. Nico, what was the transition like for you to managing a team for Ollie and Scoops?
Luckily, I got some practice on my DreamWorks TV show, but I'll answer your question in order. And please excuse him if he's in the background there. Ollie and Scoops is the culmination of lots of just, I mean, I work in animation in LA, so lots of studio jobs and just honestly saving up. Props to Z for having a successful Kickstarter. I have not tried Kickstarter, but I'm just like years and years of just working and saving up. Pretty much everything I've made over the last decade is like what's going into making my cartoon. But right before Ollie and Scoops, I did an online DreamWorks TV YouTube channel show called Too Loud, and that really was like, I really got my feet wet on that. And Ollie and Scoops has been pretty smooth, to where like Too Loud was really figuring out like how to run a show, how things work, how to keep your crew happy, finding the right people, finding people who didn't work so well, people who work really well, and then keep them, So lots of trial and error with that. They budget, so thankfully I didn't have to worry about that part. But so I was able to focus on just like, obviously like writing, making sure the stories are working, making sure the crew's happy, you know, everyone. I was kind of like my own accountant too, so it's like you got to make sure everyone gets paid when they, you know, as soon as they finish the work, and keep up on that. So lots of like record keeping and stuff like that. But yeah, that really helps solidify what it means to be a showrunner and to take care of your crew. So by the time Ollie and Scoops rolled around, I just grabbed the same people and just continued what I was doing. But yeah, it's really great. I love show running. I kind of do everything, you know, directing, right? I'm sure you guys, the other creators here do as well. But yeah, it's I don't know. I imagine I've never had working physically with my crew, like in a building, like Monday through Friday, you know, a job, studio job. My crew's all over the world. They're in the United States, they're in the UK, they're in, you know, Germany, Malaysia, like you name it, you know. So I think it's a bit harder to do what we're doing because our crews are all over the place, and I do miss that. Like there's a sense of teamwork, of course, and camaraderie, but there's nothing quite like being like together in a studio, you know, seeing each other every day.
Yeah.
So you know, that's the one piece of the puzzle, I guess, that I haven't experienced yet that I hope to with my own show, that is. You know, but yeah.
Yeah, if I could interject on that, like definitely trying to keep your team of people like communicating with each other is pretty vital. So that's not just like email relays back and forth. The way that I went about making sure that there was a space that everybody could chat at and like see all the information and like mingle and do that like water cooler talk basically was Discord server.
Yep.
Yeah. Discord server. I'm in voice calls all the time. I basically sit in a voice call so people know they can just hop in whenever. It's the equivalent of in studio, the door is open, you know, just walk in, ask questions. And everybody can see everybody else's work, which gives them really important context for when they're working that lets them know whether or not something they're doing like is going to stitch in well, even before you say anything. So it's a collaborative medium when you're talking about something on this scale. So you really need people to be able to communicate with each other and communicate with you and understand what they're doing and why they're doing it as smoothly as possible.
And there's tough parts where you have to be, you know, if someone's not working out, you gotta be confrontational, which is like hard for artists to do.
Yeah,
it's a very non-confrontational breed, but
I've been on projects
if you have to,
where the director like refused to confront issues. They just kind of let them happen and and boil over, and it just, and this is in studios even. It's not indie stuff, even like studios too will have this happen. You have to have the guts to go, okay, maybe I don't want to have this conversation, but what's best for the project is what's good for the crew, because there is no project without the crew. And so if somebody's having some trouble, you don't like just assume that they're doing something malicious, of course, but you do have to be able to have like a hard conversation. And as rough as it is, oftentimes it just kind of comes down to saying to somebody, hey, you know, you're having a hard time. Maybe you're not willing to admit it, but I need to take this from you so that you have this space to figure that out. And oftentimes you'll find that people like are better for it, and they'll come back to you and they'll be like, okay, I had my breather and I'm much happier for it. Just because a lot of us are just too proud to admit when you have a problem. So your job as the director is to like pay attention to that before it becomes an issue. Because then you just don't want somebody crumbling on the project. That's like no good. And it takes experience to like recognize when that's going to happen, essentially. So you have to keep an eye on people. You have to take care of them.
No, that's a very good point. And one thing I've heard from a lot of artists giving advice to students and early career artists is taking feedback. But I think the flip side of that, giving feedback, is a skill, and it's a skill that takes a long time to develop.
Oh, absolutely. You have to have in mind, like, what kind of feedback would you want? And then you have to be willing to adjust how to deliver that based on the person. So if you
talk to your crew and you know them, then you know that certain people are going to respond better to certain methods of speaking or presenting the information than others. And you try to provide as many different kinds of communication as you can. So depending on what and how they process that information, they're able to like do their job. And then if they're still having difficulty, you have to make yourself available to them, because, you know, for most people, it's just the fundamental fact of being human. You know, you learn by just talking to somebody else, not just like picking it up on your own and just figuring it out. And you also got to make it very clear to your crew, please ask questions, because there is no stupid question. Because if you think it's a stupid question and you try to like resolve it on your own, you might come up with the wrong answer. And there could have been something simpler that could have gotten done like a lot more efficiently if you just had asked. You're not going to be like punished for asking a question. Like in fact, punishment's not really the goal at all. It's just making sure everything's smooth. Like I have no interest in punishing anybody. This isn't school. I'm not your dad. No. So yeah, just giving feedback is a skill. Like, and I think to be a good director, you have to have some aspect of being a good teacher, because you have to, if you can't communicate your idea and get people to adopt it as their own and understand it, if you're just holding their hand through everything, it's going to be a harder time for you. It's going to be a harder time for them, because they can't work independently on whatever you've assigned them if they don't know why or how something is done. So,
right. And you can't just have a baseball team full of Fables.
No, you probably wouldn't want one either. No.
So Z, I know you just started production on your pilot. What was your approach to managing the team so far?
So like I'm basically sort of running most of it. I have one of my friends as like a background lead. I know a lot of people that I've talked to do appoint leads for every department, but right now I am helming most of them, except for backgrounds. But yeah, as like for production overall, thankfully I also sort of had a little bit of experience before jumping into Ramshackle. Like in school, we had these like group films that we had to do in our third year, which gave a really good glimpse into how it is running a team and how to organize a production and a schedule. The team back then was like way smaller. It was like a group of 8 or 10, but it still like really, really helped with like what I'm doing now. And yeah, I also worked on like a few indie projects before, including Lackadaisy, right? So I sort of like copied how they set up their Discord servers and stuff. And yeah, it's like the production's been going really well. I totally agree with Fable and how like communication's really important, and like communicating what you're thinking really clearly. Because I've definitely struggled with that. Like I was trying to teach someone like something about the style or whatever, and I realized that like teaching is like really, really hard. It definitely is its own skill, and it's something that I need to practice. But overall, it would like make the production go a lot smoother. But yeah, communication is super important. Yeah, that's all I got to say.
Yeah, you know, a thesis film is often the first and often the only time artists in the animation industry get a chance to direct. So I wondered, did your experience with with your thesis film, how did that build into the pilot, and how has that influenced your approach? And I think my cat might be jumping into the frame, so I'm just gonna
so cute. Yeah, how did the thesis film influence the pilot? Um, that's a really good question. I think it really helped with saving time with like the style, the development of like the style, because I didn't have to start from scratch or anything. It was just kind of there. It was just a matter of sort of streamlining it so that other people would like have an easier time replicating the style, the animation style, and like backgrounds and stuff. Um, in addition to the comic as well, it also sort of helped flesh out the characters a little bit, like how I wanted them to behave on the screen. And whenever I'm like onboarding new people, I can also be like, hey, just watch the thesis film. This is what it's about. So it's really nice, like using it as like a proof of concept in a way. Yeah, it just sped up the process a lot more.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that answer. Fable, in your opinion and experiences, what are the biggest challenges associated with making independent animation?
I think well, funding is one. I've been able to work full time on this project, but it's not been a lot of money. It's been mostly my ability to hunker down and just live really, really thinly with a lot of roommates and a very supportive and understanding partner. But like, he's not bringing in a whole lot of money either. He's just supporting me in the, like helping out around the house and helping make sure that I eat food. Just like keeping healthy and like keeping some sort of like routine that keeps you like focused on what you're doing. Like that's really tough. Like managing just like the ways in which there's the stress of making things can like, make you just so frustrated or anxious that you just kind of want to curl up in a ball and cry. But it's like, well, you still have to get up and you have to go and talk to people and get the project done though, because it's got to get done. It's got to get done. And the like I regret absolutely nothing. And I'm glad that in some ways doing this project taught me a lot about taking care of myself, because if I didn't take care of myself, then I couldn't take care of the project. I couldn't take care of the crew. If I wasn't eating or sleeping enough or taking breaks, that would wear down my brain. And then it was that much harder to assist people at the level that they needed to. So I needed to start prioritizing my health and how I, talked to myself and took care of myself, because otherwise, other people would have to take care of me more, or cover for my mistakes. And it's like, I just can't do that. So I think just don't sacrifice your health in the service of your craft. You need to instead maintain your health in the service of your craft. Like there is no making the cartoon without you after all. It's not going to just happen, and you're not going to get rewarded for hurting yourself. So even though I'm exhausted right now, it's because I'm in the last legs, and I've been trying to be very careful overall about making sure that I am taking care of myself, even during this last stretch as things get done. And that wasn't going to be possible for me to do that unless I had already developed the skills through my life and through the course of the project to just maintain. Because I've been on projects, I've seen like the leads of projects like just crumble and fall apart because of the stress, like fall into like really deep dark holes, and you don't want to end up like that. You have to make sure that you are okay, especially since you have a crew and they will look at how you're treating yourself and assume that's what they should do for themselves, and that's not good. So like if I'm up really late, I've noticed that people will stay up late with me and then they won't sleep and they won't like go and get food and stuff. So I have to be like, hey, go take a break. Hey, have you had your tea, water? Have you eaten today? Did you sleep okay? And if I hear that they're not, I'm like, go take a nap. Like, the project's not going to get done faster if you sacrifice like an hour or two that could have been spent sleeping on this. In fact, you usually won't get any good work at all. Like the more tired you are, the more mistakes you have to fix from when you are tired. So it's worth it to take care of yourself, because in the long term, it matters a lot more. You just don't want to like walk away from the project and everything hurts and your eyes are fucked and just you just are miserable, because then there's just the memory of making the thing is associated with like just this deep and prolonged pain, and you do not want that, because that's going to discourage you from making anything in the future. If you don't want to make anything in the future, that's fine, that's prerogative. But if you want to keep going, if this is what you want to keep doing, you want to keep refining your craft and seeing where else you can go, take care of yourself and forgive yourself for mistakes too, because it's a learning process. And even like the old masters in our field will say, oh yeah, I'm still just learning. You know, I'm a newbie to this. And that's kind of the joy of it, is that you will always be learning. Like there's no upper limit. It's like, well, I've learned everything I need to know. No. And yeah, if you want to keep going long term, then you got to take care of yourself.
Yeah, I think two things I'm taking away from that. Number one is that it's important to take care of yourself, because production is, you can't sprint through the entire marathon of production. And the second is just setting a really good example for the people that you're working with, because they will see what you do.
Yeah, when you are at the helm of production, every production I've been on, the mood of it starts from the top and goes down. It's not that the people at the top are necessarily like responsible for everything at the bottom, but they do set the tone. And so the way that they behave and treat themselves and other people communicates to the other folks on the crew what's expected of them. They're like, okay, that's the baseline. Now what do I do? So if you treat yourself poorly or you treat other people poorly, you can expect the crew to kind of like mimic that a bit. And so how do you want people to treat themselves? How do you want them to treat each other? That's how you should be behaving to them. Because you're setting the example.
Yourself too, to an extent as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So.
Nico, in your opinion, what are the biggest challenges associated with producing independent animation?
Money, yeah, everything that Fable said, but plus, of course, money, financing. There's a reason that studios and executives exist. You don't have to worry about your own budget. But also, another big hurdle is when I set deadlines and due dates and stuff like that, it can be sometimes hard for the crew to make those deadlines, because chances are, if you have indie animators working on your indie animation, they are also working on other stuff. And
oh yeah, so, absolutely.
Yeah. They're working on other people's projects. I'm sure that the three of us probably share a couple people on our crews. Sometimes Ollie and Scoop's fans, I guess, will be like, a new episode will come out, and then I'll see a comment saying, I thought this show ended. Or like, you know, the last episode was 6 months ago. What took so long? It's like, well, this takes a long time, especially animation, but, you know, just being able to afford it and getting your crew to like commit and, you know, finish things up, especially if they're working on other people's stuff. So that's always a bummer when a long time passes between episodes of the show and people like it forget, or like, you know, think that it ended, or think that I got fed up and stopped making it or something. And then all of a sudden, whoa, where did this new episode come from? It's like, well, we've been working on it for 6 months. Here it is. So yeah, there's definitely, it's not easy doing indie animation, but it is rewarding and fun.
Yeah, I think one thing that I liked about your answer too is you mentioned that there's a reason why studios and executives exist, because those funding structures do make it a lot more practical. It's one way of solving the challenge of funding production is, well, there's a studio there that can make it. Mm-hmm. And if that's not there, then you have to find other ways of addressing that challenge.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to make the project yourself, you need to find some kind of way to be able to afford to make it.
Yeah. So Z, During your experience with producing Ramshackle, what sort of challenges do you think are based on your experience, what are the biggest challenges associated with producing independent animation?
I was gonna say money as well, just like Nico, because it really is like a huge part of it, because you want to be able to like compensate artists for their work and stuff. And animation, like when people say animation isn't cheap, it really is not cheap. Like we had to raise like 80,000 Canadian dollars for a Kickstarter, and I feel like even then it's not enough. Like
yeah, we
yeah,
raise more money, and it's like it goes by way faster than you think. This is not lucrative.
yeah, it's so tough, dude. But yeah, like money's like a huge part, and like luckily, like I'm not making any money working on Ramshackle at all. Like all of the money from the Kickstarter is going to the project. But like luckily I had savings from my previous job, which allows me to sort of like do this comfortably. But if anyone's like going into indie animation, just be aware that it will drain your wallet. And I think like I think time is also like a huge thing. Like you basically have to dedicate like a lot of time to your production if you want to make it like run smoothly, and if you want to make it like finish it in a decent amount of time. Like I'm basically working on Ramshackle full time. Like I don't think I would be able to do like work on the side and do Ramshackle at the same time. But it's also like I guess it's like easier to focus on one thing for me. But yeah, time's like a huge thing. You spend like a lot more time working than you expect, even if you're not like animating or painting backgrounds and stuff. Like doing all the other I don't know what you call it, like producing behind the scenes stuff, like hiring people, keeping track of invoices and stuff. It takes a lot of time. And it's something that I learned pretty recently. But yeah, those are like the sort of challenges that I've found 2 months into production.
If I could piggyback off of what you said, I would say definitely don't design your production around like your greatest ambitions. Design it around the budget and the time that you have, and be really modest, because it's going to go way more overboard than you think. Like way more overboard than you think. So like if you look at some of the stuff that we've done, you're like, yeah, I could do that, and you haven't done any of this before, or you have a budget of like potato. Don't just don't. You will suffer. I think a really good example of indie animation done on, sorry, that's my bird. Indie animation done on a budget in a more timely way is a lot of those storytime animators, because they figured out how to make stuff a little faster with like a small crew of just themselves most of the time, or at least when they were starting out. And over time they got more ambitious as they got more funding, and you could see the production value growing, and it's a little less simple. But I think that's a really good space to maybe start. Is just like make it really, really simple. Don't worry about like a ton of backgrounds. Make the character designs very simple, because you're going to be drawing them over and over again. And maybe you would love to do like your Sparkle Dog epic animation involving like dragon fights and stuff. But can you like how many seconds of that do you think you can accomplish in a weekend if you are also not doing it full time? And even if you are doing it full time, how many seconds do you think you can accomplish in a weekend? Because something about running a project where you're, being the helm of a crew of people is so much of your time is just helping them that you don't have as much time to do your own work as you think. And so you have to account for that. That's probably the biggest struggle I had, was trying to balance the work that I assign to myself versus the work that I have to do for other people. That's a real limiting factor. So if you want to do your own thing, you have to be really, 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 really modest. Trust me, you will at the very least, gain the experience from that modest work that will help you make more ambitious things. Don't start too ambitious. It's fine. Nobody's gonna. If anybody like comes down on you, it's like, well, this isn't as amazing as I thought you could do. Well, they'll not make it a cartoon, so you got a leg up on them.
So we've talked a bit about some of the challenges and things to think about when working on independent projects. But I really wanted to ask, what has independence allowed you to achieve that you might not have otherwise been able to do otherwise? So Z, I want to ask you, what has like the freedom of being independent enabled you to do?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I can make the characters swear, which is pretty nice.
You have children smoking and drinking alcohol and running around in
Yep.
like parts without seatbelts.
I mean,
And sometimes the eyebrows, their expressions are angry, and S&P would like to have a word with you about that.
yeah.
Oh yeah. You have a girl that scowls. You know that they're not allowed to pinch their eyebrows together. Like they might look too angry. You can't have that.
Yeah. God, thank God I don't have to deal with that because Ramshackle is like, it's a mess. Like it's a glorious mess, and standards and practices would like hate me. But anyway, yeah, I can make the characters swear, and honestly, like it really helped me to just make the thing. Like I don't know, like I've asked a lot of people, I've done my research about like the green lighting process with studios and stuff, and it's like a very, very long process, and it takes a lot of luck as well. So like I guess instead of waiting around and like finding out if Ramshackle will even be considered uh like good material for a studio, and like having like maybe a 1% chance of getting like a pilot made, I was like, okay, might as well just do it myself so I can sort of like cement like an episode in the public, so it's out there and it exists. And yeah, like I just really didn't want to wait. I just wanted to sort of like dive into it. And yeah, like it gives like a lot of freedom and stuff. What else was I gonna say? God.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you didn't want to wait to ask permission from a studio to make this. You just wanted to make it.
Exactly. Like I did have like a bit of interest like after Ramshackle, the thesis film, came out. But then I had to think about it quite a bit, and I was like, I just want to make this thing and sort of like see how I do as like a showrunner. Like if I want to make Ramshackle into like a series or something like bigger. But yeah, it just really helped me be like directly linked with Ramshackle, if that makes sense. Like I don't have to go through a bunch of people and like have them alter my vision. And I can also work with like all my friends and peers that like that I'm super comfy with, and like bring on whoever I want, which is really, really nice.
Yeah, we are a little bit tight for time, but Fable, I wanted to ask you, what has independence allowed you to achieve on Lackadaisy that you might not have otherwise been able to do?
Well, I think in some ways the indie sphere has been my go-to while I've been in between work in the industry. So it's been kind of a survival mechanism for me to just keep pursuing my own stuff because, sometimes work runs dry. The animation industry has its ups and downs, and projects get greenlit or don't. I know a lot of people are nervous about the current like chaos going on, and that's unfortunately that's kind of how it is. It has sometimes there's a lot going on, sometimes there's very little, and sustaining yourself through that is really, really tough. But meanwhile, I mean, I don't want to just like linger around. And I'm sorry about the whistling. It is morning here in Los Angeles, and my birds want to let me know that fact. Anyway, yes, I can hear you. It's kept me alive, and it's kept me connected to other artists, and it's just been like a source by which I can make stuff myself, sure, but it's more than just like, oh, this would be, really cool if I did this, I guess. It's also just like, I feel like I need to make stuff. I need to. If I can find a way to make money doing it, then I will. But it's like a compulsion for me, because otherwise animation's so hard. I can't imagine anybody doing this if they didn't really want to, like if they were just driven to do it, because it's just so difficult. But on the other side, like the more lofty philosophical side, I said earlier that I wasn't sure that anybody was going to pick it up, because I'm not a famous entity whose name can carry like a more out there project as far as the studio system is concerned. And so if we wanted to make a cartoon, you had to make one, and you don't have to view. I think a lot of people view animation as somehow being something that Disney does. It's like that the companies own more or less that medium, and which is fundamentally not true. Anybody can animate. You can pick up a stack of paper and start making your own little flip books. You can make animation of pretty much any level if you got enough like time and effort and energy and money to do it, and patience, especially patience. You can do a lot. I've seen people do amazing stuff just on their own entirely. And you wouldn't see that if it was going through a studio system. So I think understanding that it's not indie versus industry, it's, whether or not you're making money, working for somebody else or not on something. And yeah, not every project is going to get sold. Doesn't matter how good it is, an idea it is, it's not every project's going to get made. Or even if they pick it up, it might not make it all the way through. We've seen a lot of projects just get canceled before they even get out the door. So if you're indie, at least a lot of that is in your control. Like the ability to just like make your own decisions about stuff, even if it's rougher, that can make a big difference, because it's like, I trust that I can do this, even if other people don't. And I feel like I want to show that fact off. It's like, I can do this. Look at it. This is what I can do if you were just to allow me the opportunity. And there's a certain amount of pride and ego in that. And I think it's okay to show that off, to display that every once, like sincerely and with love. Yeah.
No, that's well said. Nico, what has independence allowed you to achieve that you might not have been able to do otherwise?
Everything Fable and Z said. You can create whatever you want. You don't have to worry about notes from execs or S&P. You can stop whenever you want. Your imagination is your own limit. So just being able to dream whatever you can dream and make whatever stories you would like, and actually just, you're the person who gives the thumbs up and the go ahead. Just that alone is so freeing and is a great feeling.
All right, we are out of time. Nico, is there one website that you would like to give our audience, draw our audience's attention to?
Sure. YouTube.com/Nico Animation, or just search Google or YouTube for Ollie and Scoops.
All right. Z, if you could point our audience to one website, what website would you point them to?
YouTube as well. It's my channel's at ZEZ. And yeah, YouTube's good.
And Fable, if you could give our audience one link to follow, where would you send them?
You're the man now.com. No.
Excellent.
Lackadaisy.com. That's LACKADAISY.com. That's where you can find the original webcomic, and you can support Tracy Butler, the creator there, through her Patreon. Not only do have we gone through Kickstarter funding, but she also has paid for a lot of stuff out of pocket herself as like expenses have popped up that we didn't expect. So, and it also helps the comic keep going. So, I mean, it's very helpful. But also you can follow us at youtube.com/lackadaisycomic. Just search Lackadaisy on YouTube. We'll pop right up. You'll see like a little grinning freckle icon, little kitty cat. And you can also follow our production blog at littledaisycafe.com. Sorry again for the squeaking. That's my boy. He wants to come out and eat his fruit. And you can follow me at fablepaint.com. That's my website. And I'm also on Twitter and Tumblr under the same name, Fable Paint.
Amazing. Thank you, Nico, Fable, and Z for joining us today. And thank you to our audience for joining us for the Animation Trends event. The Animation Trends event is an online conference hosted by Toon Boom Animation. You can visit toonboom.com for details about interviews, panel discussions, and speed training courses. And we hope you tune in to our next discussion.